Prepare to experience the strongest radio allowable by law. Secrets will be revealed. Myths dispelled. From the studio gym where excuses never apply, it's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Superhuman Radio. We have a great show planned for you today during the first half hour. We're going to be doing our normally scheduled episode of Science for Humans. We're going to be talking about lysine and how it affects things like fever sores and even shingles with Dr. Jeff Golini. Then we're going to switch it up, and we're going to be talking about the pros and cons of CLA. We know about conjugated linoleic acid. It's used for weight loss and lots of other things. We're going to get to the bottom of that. And then at the top of the second hour, we're going to be talking about low carbohydrate diets for diabetes and obesity. The mainstream is finally starting to figure this out. Just want to mention a couple things. Superhuman Radio is made possible through a special grant from All American Pharmaceutical and their product line, which is All American EFX Sports. You can check them out by going to superhumanradio.com. Also, last week on Science for Humans, we gave away the dangers of creatinine, however you like to pronounce it. We still have some books available. This is an actual book. It'll be autographed by Dr. Jeff Golini and mailed to you. If you want a copy, there's still some available. Send an email to onair@superhumanradio.com. Include your mailing address, so we don't have to email you back and ask for that. Okay, so drum roll, please.
This is Science for Humans with Dr. Jeff Golini.
I got your music right this time, Jeff.
Wow, oh, that's very nice.
I know, I'm actually on the ball for once. How you doing?
I'm doing good. How about you?
Good. This is when we plan these shows, this is the one I wanted to do first, because this is the one that's most exciting to me.
I know. That's why I waited a little bit.
I know, you stinker, you. So this is one that people can really take away and use, because everybody knows somebody who's had a fever sore. But more importantly, shingles is on the rise right now. In fact, they have shingles vaccines. And a lot of people actually develop the shingles after they get the vaccine. I was talking to a guy in the sauna today about this. He said, "What are you talking about today?" And I told him about the first half hour. He goes, my wife convinced me to go and get a shingles vaccine. I never had the shingles in my life. I got the vaccine a year and a half later. He said, I had this thing on my eye. The doctor asked me if I ever got the shingles vaccine. And I said, yes. He goes, well, this is a reaction to the vaccine. He goes, what is it? He goes, well, it's not full-blown shingles. It's kind of a mild version of shingles. We're seeing this in people who get the vaccine. I'm like, whoa, why would you want to get the vaccine if it's going to give you mild shingles?
Oh, wow.
I mean, it's crazy. So let's start, first of all, what is lysine?
Yeah, and I think that's the first thing we got to talk about is, lysine is what's called an amino acid. And if you're not familiar with amino acids, these are the building blocks of protein. They are essential for our body's use and normal production. Amino acids are broken into two categories: essential amino acids and non-essential amino acids. Non-essential amino acids are the amino acids that your body produces, synthesizes, so you don't need to get them from dietary sources. The essential list are things that your body don't produce, and you need to get those from your dietary list. So lysine is an essential amino acid, again, meaning that your body doesn't produce this. It's essential that you do take it in. Basically, what does it do? It's necessary for building all protein in the body. It plays a major role in the absorption of calcium, which is very important. Builds muscle protein. It helps us to recover from surgeries or sports injuries. And it also aids in the body's production of hormones, enzymes, and antibodies. So very, very important amino acid. it's so important that, nature has made it quite abundant in a variety of foods. Mm-hmm. So unless you are on some very, very strict diet, it's pretty easy to get in some lysine.
Well, you'd be surprised how many people don't eat. Vegans will probably have a harder time getting adequate amounts of lysine in unless they're eating whole soybean, whole pumpkin seeds, and even peas have some good amounts of lysine in it. But I think the greatest amounts of lysine come from animal protein, right?
They do, and usually people who are, strict vegetarians or vegans do have a higher rate of lysine deficiency. But, just to throw out a couple, fish has got the highest amount of lysine, just to kind of categorize
Guess which fish has the highest amount of lysine of all fish?
It's actually, there's a whole list of them. You want me to rattle them off?
Well, okay, yeah, please. What?
Tuna and yellowtail actually have 9.2%, and within that range you have like salmon, trout, grouper, maui, and then catfish is right behind it with 9.1. And maybe you had another list or
no. I was surprised that catfish was up there because catfish is. I don't. When I was a kid, I ate catfish. We used to catch them in the lake, but then I started to learn that catfish are kind of the garbage men of the lakes, and they eat everything that's gross at the bottom of the lake. And I thought, I don't like to eat catfish anymore, but I was surprised to see that catfish was very, very high in lysine. I think that's something.
It is. And then right after that, beef, we're about 8.3%, and then we get into our chicken. So obviously most people who eat meat, are going to get a pretty good amount of lysine. Excuse me, you do find it, in your lentils, a lot of your beans, chickpeas, soybeans, navy beans. And then I was surprised to find out that milk was 7.4% lysine, and then Parmesan cheese was high in lysine.
I love Parmesan cheese. In fact, Elisa and I make Parmesan cheese chips. We shred Parmesan cheese, put it on a piece of what do they call that paper? It's not wax paper, but anyway, put it on parchment paper. Thank you. On a cookie sheet, and then just bake it off in the oven at 400 degrees until it turns yellow, and then let it dry and get crisp, and eat those when we want something crunchy. Well, who knew that Parmesan cheese was so high in lysine?
Absolutely. And then I was also surprised that eggs, were very high. So for most people who do eat, eggs and meats, it's pretty easy to get a pretty good dose of lysine into your diet. Like I said, it's so important that nature put it in a variety of items.
How much lysine do you think we need to get on a regular basis to have some of the protective effects? And then we'll talk about what it protects against.
From what I think, somewhere between 500 to 625 milligrams a day, of lysine, to do what lysine needs to do seems to be a pretty good amount. And like I said, that's pretty easy to get that in from your diet. If not, we'll talk later about, supplements and things to be able to get that lysine in.
So let's talk about what lysine is good for. And then we'll take our first commercial break. This is really exciting to me because there are so many people who suffer from some of these conditions that all fall under the herpes simplex category, right?
Absolutely. And, instead of talking about what lysine's good for, we'll talk about, what some of the deficiencies are, and then that'll kind of show you what it's good for. One of the biggest ones is if you've got appetite loss or you just have trouble putting on weight, that's a lysine deficiency.
Really?
Yeah. The next one is, fatigue and mood changes. A lot of us get tired. Caffeines and all the things we do probably affect our lysine levels. You'll see lysine in a lot of hair vitamins. So, if you have thinning hair, or you start to get some of your hair falls out as you're combing or showering, that's also a lysine deficiency. Anemia, which, that would be more of a medical condition, but that is also a deficiency of lysine. And some newer studies are showing that anxiety by people who are low in lysine seem to be more anxious, and as they introduced more lysine into the diet, their anxiety levels decreased.
Now that one makes sense. I want to hold with that. Hold on to that last thought for a second, Dr. Golini. That one makes sense because herpes simplex is a virus that stores itself in the basal ganglia of the neuron, and it erupts when people are under great deals of stress.
Yes.
So that one makes perfect sense.
That one does, and again, some of the more recent research where they've used just, normal families where in some parts of the world, like Syria, where they are deficient in lysine, they seem to be more anxious than other parts of the world. That was an interesting study. And then, of course, getting on to the big one, which are cold sores and herpes. As you said, that's the virus, herpes simplex. Most people don't realize that also causes cold sores, besides the genital herpes. But that is, I call it a lysine deficiency, but actually lysine works a little bit differently in order to help suppress that virus.
Okay, do you think that the pathway that it suppresses it is through what we just discovered, that it somehow attenuates the perceived levels of stress and lets the virus remain dormant?
Actually, there's a much simpler way that this works. Another amino acid that is on the non-essential list is L-arginine.
Right.
And you may not know, but arginine is required by herpes. So what lysine actually does is it works to help repress the metabolism of arginine, which then will hinder the amount of outbreaks of herpes. Herpes needs arginine to do its thing. So that's the most common way that lysine does work on that herpes virus.
So it would be considered lysine, and I always get these mixed up. Lysine would be an agonist or antagonistic of arginine? Or neither.
Boy, you're like me.
I always get those confused. I always get confused whether agonist
antagonist because it's antagonizing the metabolizing, but I always get those confused myself.
So if somebody does suffer from fever sores, they should increase their lysine intake, but that increase should be relative to how much arginine you're also consuming as well, whether it's dietary supplements or other sources like I want to say beet juice, which is known to have some is it arginine or nitrates? Maybe it has nitrates in it that cause nitric oxide synthase.
Yeah, those have the nitrates. Yeah, again, we don't want to give anyone the impression that you quit taking arginine, because again, arginine is important for muscle growth and growth hormone and other types of items. But if you do have the herpes simplex virus, which is in a lot of us, and it never shows up, that might be something to discuss with your doctor, to be careful not to take in excess amounts. So I wouldn't go out and take the supplement arginine. That I would stay away from.
Interesting. All right, let's do this. Let's take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll pick up on the other side. We're talking right now with Dr. Jeff Golini. We're talking about lysine, this amino acid. We're going to talk about supplementation as well when we come back, and how it can protect you against the herpes virus, whether it be herpes simplex on your lip or on your genitalia, or the herpes zoster simplex, which is the painful form of shingles. We'll talk about that when we come right back. Stay tuned.
Freakish muscle gains, Freakmaker Build from AAEFX. It's a scientifically engineered post-workout formula that combines protein, whey isolate, whey concentrate, milk isolate, casein, and egg, quality protein sources with carbolin, free alkaline, and medium-chain triglycerides. A 2-to-1 carb-to-protein ratio to optimize post-training recovery and repair. Freakmaker Build delivers 58 grams of fast-absorbing carbolin to replenish glycogen stores and 1.5 grams of free alkaline pH-buffered and creatine monohydrate. Get Freakmaker Milled today. Go to superhumanradio.com and click the AAEFX banner ad. The benefits of a ketogenic diet are immeasurable. Health, resist disease, mental function, and even performance. But getting into ketosis can take weeks, if even at all. Now you can get into ketosis in 10 minutes. Ketocana is the first ketone powder that has been clinically shown to switch you into a ketogenic state by providing a rush of ketones into the bloodstream. Like to train fasted or want to spare more muscle glycogen during workouts? Take a shot of Ketocana and hit it hard. Go to superhumanradio.com and click the Ketocana banner ad today.
You're listening to the Superhuman Channel. We're ripped and we're ready.
4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to Science for Humans with Dr. Jeff Golini. Today we're talking about lysine, the magic of lysine. If you are somebody who is prone to fever sores or one of the herpes simplex family of conditions, whether that be genitalia or even herpes zoster, which is so popular today, they have a vaccine for it called the Shingles vaccine, a very, very painful form of herpes. Knowing about lysine could actually be very beneficial to you. So, lysine works. That's the good news, but the bad news is that lysine works, and what I mean by that is you can't just take it recklessly, can you?
No, you can't. Like anything, you got to be responsible. Although there hasn't been any toxicity studies done on, long, prolonged use at high levels, there's been a couple incidences, where people took 3 to 4 grams a day for a couple years that they did have some health issues. But I think, what research has been done, 1,250 milligrams when you feel a cold sore or a fever blister coming on for a couple, 2-3 days until that goes away seems to be the magic number.
Now, okay, so once the outbreak has occurred, it can curtail it then, huh? It can shorten the outbreaks period?
Absolutely. At that point, your body obviously has an abundance of arginine to produce that outbreak. So by increasing your lysine, you will start to retard that or slow that growth down.
Now, maintaining healthy intake of lysine, which can be done with dietary choices, making sure that you're eating enough animal protein and dairy and stuff like that, should maintain good levels of lysine intake. That in and of itself, has that been shown to reduce the number of outbreaks over a period of time?
Absolutely. I think if you're someone who typically doesn't get very many cold sores, fever blisters, canker sores, then you probably, it's a good sign that you're getting in adequate amounts of lysine from your diet. But if you're someone who on a weekly basis or monthly basis, has cold sores, then again, that's an indication that you are deficient in lysine. So you're going to either need to look at those lysine-rich foods or look to a lysine supplement to help bring those levels back up.
What about topical application of lysine? Any evidence that might be beneficial for localized, to just put it right on the sore, so to speak?
There are some over-the-counter medicines that, help from a topical standpoint, but this is something that has to happen internally, for that to be effective. So
if people are maintaining adequate lysine intake, and especially paying attention to lysine intake, if you're supplementing with things like L-arginine or L-arginine alpha-ketoglutarate or any of these spin-off molecules, you are prone to fever sores or herpes outbreaks, you do need to pay attention to your lysine intake, right?
Absolutely. Either decrease your arginine intake, or I would definitely be on a maintenance lysine intake to combat that excess arginine.
There are some contraindications. Taking lysine with antibiotics may be contraindicated. So if you have to go on antibiotics for some reason and you're taking lysine, you may want to stop taking it for a short period of time. The other health disorders that you were talking about a moment ago, if somebody already has kidney issues and or cardiovascular issues, lysine may not be the best thing for you. Lysine apparently has the ability to cause arteries to become more rigid, so to speak. And as a result of that, if you have any type of issues with vasculature and arteries and or your heart, you probably shouldn't just take lysine without paying attention to these issues. And probably lysine from your diet is going to be more than enough to tilt the scale in the right direction to deal with an outbreak. Would you agree with that, Dr. Golini?
I do. And, just to stress, anyone who does have, any type of ailment or you're on any type of medication, you always want to check with your doctor before taking any type of supplements. We're not medical doctors. We're just kind of here to help give the information. So if you do have some ailment or you're on a prescription drug, always double check with your doctor to make sure that it isn't going to react with what you're doing.
Yeah. What else do we need to know about lysine and the discussion we're having today?
Well, like I said, I think the most important thing to realize is that, by increasing to that 1,250 milligrams a day, you're doing pretty good. But what I wanted to talk about is, what if you can't get in any more food? What else could you use? That's where we start to talk about the lysine supplement. And my recommendation is do not go buy it from the big box stores. They carry the cheapest product at the cheapest price. Go to a quality health food store who has researched, what brands they trust in, or a reputable online place. You can usually buy lysine in capsules or tablets. But, with some of the most recent issues with these non-appearing herbs and products, I always recommend you don't go to the mass market, get it for $1.50 a bottle place.
Well, the other issue with amino acids is where are they synthesized from? So I found out a while back that some of the manufacturers over in Asia of amino acid blends like EAAs and BCAAs, they were actually making this from the feathers of birds. And you may think, well, that's no big deal, but it is, because these feathers are really dirty, disgusting things that they're starting out with. And even with the purification process, I don't know that I want my amino acids to come from there. The other thing is amino acids can carry heavy metals if they're not made right, if they're not made under the proper, strict supervision. And so these cheaper brands, like you're talking about, these no-name brands out there may actually be tainted with heavy metals. You don't need that. You don't want that.
And you want to make sure that, again, the brand isn't also contaminated with other amino acids. The feather processing, it literally sits out in the open in tanks. I mean, it's really dirty.
Nasty.
It's nasty. And, the best is fermentation process, but none of the brands are going to really tell you how that's done. But usually if it costs a little bit more, there's a reason. It's probably a higher quality, was manufactured in a GMP facility, and the brand behind it has done some pretty good research to make sure that that quality is good for you.
So I took a chance and just Googled topical lysine. And I found a half a dozen brands of topical lysine, and they all claim to cut the outbreak of herpes and or fever sores in half. Half. Some of them have other things in them that have analgesic and even numbing effects, because we know that these types of fever sores are very painful. The nerve endings that protrude within them become hypersensitized. People complain about the feeling of burning skin. So some of them have analgesics and or numbing properties that get rid of that burning feeling. But the lysine in them claims to cut the outbreak in half. I think that's pretty darn good for something that's not a pharmaceutical drug.
That is, and it is a possibility that it does go in transdermally. And like you said, there's probably some other components in there. Taking vitamin C and zinc along with your lysine, is also good. So, again, if it's a reputable brand, it would be worth trying. If it's just some, internet site you've never heard of, that's got all kind of cures and testimonies, then I'd be a little bit aware of it,
Yeah, absolutely. Also want to mention once again, so we gave away, you were gracious enough and generous enough to give away 25 copies of The Dangers of Creatinine last week. And we have a lot of people, as I had suspected, who think there aren't any copies left. And these are actual copies of the book itself. It's autographed by Dr. Golini. And it's on sale at Amazon.com, quite frankly. You could buy it as well, but you can get a copy for free. We still have, I want to say, about a half a dozen to 7 or 8 copies left at last count.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So anyone who would like a copy, it's like Carl said, just go ahead and make sure you give us your address. Carl, where do they want to send that to?
On air at superhumanradio.com, and you will get your autographed copy of The Dangers of Creatinine. Great book. And keep in mind, it doesn't just talk about supplementation with creatine. It talks about how to actually prepare your food so it does not develop high levels of creatinine in the cooking process. This book isn't about sports supplementation. This book is about overall health. It's a great book. Great book. Rob Regish read it and told me that he thought it was a fantastic book. And so you can get a copy on air at superhumanradio.com. Include your address, your mailing address, and put the word creatine. I know it's confusing. Creatine in the subject line, okay? Dr. Jeff, thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you, Carl.
Talk to you next week.
Bye-bye.